Interesting and strange. Those scientists who were killed by their own inventions. There have been a few scientists in history who were killed by their own inventions. By the way, how many are there whose names are not in the pages of history? But the first such notable scientist was Gianfranco Pallotta di Rosier of France. He was a chemist, and thanks to this skill, he wanted to do something new in aviation. It was 1785. Rosier was trying to cross the English Channel, that is, the Strait of England, through the balloon that he made himself. It was an experiment in which he tried to fly the balloon using hydrogen and hot air, but unfortunately, the balloon caught fire and crashed. Rosier also died in this accident. By the way, the famous female scientist Marie Curie died of a blood disease, which was due to the fact that she had worked on radioactive materials for years, which had an effect on her body. In a way, we can say that Marie Curie also died at the hands of her own invention. The Titanic needs no introduction. This ship sank on its maiden voyage in 1912, and more than 1,500 people died. Among them was the designer of the ship, Thomas Andrews, who was going from Britain to America on the first voyage. A famous inventor of America was William Block. He gained great fame by making a lathe cutting machine, cotton press, seed planter and grain drill, but he was working to improve the printing press. He made a web rotary press in which large rolls of paper were fed. In 1867, he was working on his same press when one of its belts got stuck. Instead of turning off the machine, he kicked the machine to get the belt back in place. But during this movement, his foot went into the machine, which crushed him. Great efforts were made to save the leg, but the wound worsened. Finally, the decision was made to amputate the leg, and he died during the operation. Another American scientist was Horace Lawson Hunley. He designed a submarine with two of his colleagues, and he also invested in it. In 1864, his submarine, the Hunley, became the first combat submarine in history to sink a ship. This feat was accomplished by this submarine during the American Civil War, but it did not successfully return to its destination. During a dive, the bow of the submarine got stuck, and all 8 people on board were killed, including Lawson Hunley himself. Thomas Machichea was also a great scientist and inventor, but he is now infamous for the impact his inventions had on the environment. Whether it was his invention of adding lead to gasoline to increase engine power or his introduction of Freon as a refrigerant, both of these inventions caused a lot of damage to the Earth's environment. But he himself did not die from a chemical reaction. But the incident of his death is very strange. In fact, he had contracted polio and his lower body became useless. He did not like being lifted out of bed every day and being considered disabled. So he developed a complex machine, with the help of which he could get out of bed himself. And this machine worked wonderfully. Just one day, he somehow got stuck in his own machine and died of suffocation. Do you know what the Manhattan Project is? It was an American project to create the first atomic bomb during World War II. It also included physicist and chemist Louis Slotin. One day, he was demonstrating the process of joining the two halves of a plutonium core to his colleagues. This was not the first time he had done this practical experiment. But that day, the screwdriver slipped out of his hand, which connected the two halves, and produced a strong radiation that had an immediate effect on Slotin. His hand was burned, his mouth tasted bitter, and by the time he reached the hospital, his condition had worsened. Internal inflammation, mental confusion, blisters on his body, and swelling of his hands. Eventually, his body stopped working, and this 35-year-old scientist lost his life. By the way, one of his colleagues, Harry de Glehn, was also killed by the radiation from the same core. Francis Edgar Stanley worked with his brother to make photographic dry plates and made a lot of money. But his achievement was the famous Stanley Steamer car. This car was very famous for its speed. In 1906, the rocket version of this car reached a speed of 127 miles per hour. This car also sold well, and his Stanley Motor Carriage Company became rich. But eventually, electric starters and gasoline-powered engines came along, and his car's popularity began to decline. One day in 1918, Francis was driving his own car when, while avoiding a sudden obstacle on the road, the car went out of control and crashed into a pile of logs in front. He was pulled from the car in a serious condition but died before reaching the hospital. Later, his company also closed in 1924. If you like the story, please subscribe and share. Thank you.